Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Mastering the Drop, a real view of recovery. I have a very special guest with me today, a member of my team who is so gracious to come in and talk a little bit and share her story and really bring us into an awareness that I don't even believe that we've had conversation in this direction yet, but this also is an earmark for a transition for the show altogether. You are going to see us shifting in telling real life stories and bringing in, true skill sets and tactics, but also really making it easy for you to connect with us and take a journey with us so that you can get what you need from us in any given moment. You'll be able to just log in and listen to little short clips of things that we know because we've been there and we've experienced. Anyway, I don't want to dive too deep into that. I just want y'all to know that there is a little shift happening in the way that we are going to be bringing information to you and really just tuning into that genuineness and sincerity. Anyway, we all have our stories. We all have our version of what recovery looked like for us, or even getting to that place of being ready. And our journeys are all different in length, in style, in feel, in process, all the things, right? And that's no different for any of you that are listening. Like, your journey is your journey. It needs to look, feel, be however you need or want it to. The choice is yours. My life motto is, this is my life too. It gets to look, feel, be however I want it to. I get to choose. And I want to give that to you right here, right now in this space, because there isn't a box for recovery. There isn't a box for a life recovery journey. Everybody doesn't have to recover from a chemical substance. Some have process or behavioral issues. Some people are here just looking to recover because of somebody else in their space that needs recovery, whether they're not ready for it or not. Anyway, there is just so many versions. So anyway, with that said, I'd like to introduce everybody to Miss Kristen Fielder, or Mrs., I should say.
Hi, everybody.
Thanks so much for coming in here and allowing everybody to hear your voice. If I was to ask you, let's just cut to the chase, right? Like, you have had your own recovery journey. You have your own unique story. And if you wouldn't mind, like, what did it look like that day? What was that awakening moment, that day that you said, my time is now, I have to do something?
Okay. So I'm a recovering alcoholic. I have 5 years, going almost 6, but we're not projecting here. But the day that I decided it was time to make a change was, leading up to it, I was realizing, I'm in a new area, I'm in a new town, and like, my kids are just running around me. My son was 4 at the time. My youngest had just turned 2. And I realized I was not as present as I wanted to be. And I remember the day that I just decided to make the change. It was like almost midnight, and I'm sitting on the couch with my 4-year-old, and I hadn't put him to bed yet, which was terrible. And he just kept saying, "Mommy, mommy, watch a movie with me." And I just realized, this is not how I wanted to be as a mom. I wanted to be present. I wanted to be 100% there in the moment at all times. And I realized really quickly that I was dropping the ball in that sense. So, yeah.
I can relate to moments like that. I remember, times I was a, really young mom. And I remember at times, just really feeling like, although I was engaging and interacting with my child, that I wasn't present. I was, it was either that more fun version, or I was that version that was, I'm busy, you know, go entertain yourself version, you know, as a young single mom. And I'm talking late adolescence, early adulthood, right? Like, and I remember those times. I also remember those times when, you know, I handled the situation acceptably, you know, for the well-being of my child, but not to the caliber that I would have preferred. You know, times when, you know, he would wake up in the middle of the night with growing pains, and I was still up, you know, finishing that last, you know, whatever, beer, bottle of wine, whatever it was, and it'd be late. And sure, I was extremely compassionate. I was able to care for him. But if you look back at that, would I have been able to throw him in the car and take him to the ER? Should that have been a necessity? And the answer to that question would have been no. And I remember thinking about that. Now, by the grace of God, nothing like that ever happened. There was never a point where I, you know, was incapable, but it could have been super easily. And wow, that didn't sound like very good grammar. But anyway, we all get that. We all get the gist of it, right? Like there were so many situations that in hindsight, I looked at and where everything came out okay and went well, it still wasn't, it could have, or it had the potential to be something different. I was just lucky. And I know there's so many other moms out there that maybe haven't been so lucky. I've worked with several moms that have, you know, gone to an innocent enough lunch, had a couple wines with their girlfriends while their kids all played together, put their kid in the car and gotten in an accident while under the influence. And, you know, where perhaps that level of intoxication wasn't that high, it's still a very scary, eye-opening moment to say, wow, I just got in a fender bender after 2 glasses of wine at lunch. And that was unsafe. That could have gone all kinds of bad, right? And so, you know, there's so many people out there. So, you know, moving into that recovery process, right? Like, okay, something's got to change. I want this to look, feel, be different than what it is. You know, while you were in that recovery journey, were there 2 or 3 things that you really relied on heavily in that process that allowed you to, you know, I mean, early recovery, that first year is so significant and can be so difficult.
Yeah. So for me, I definitely relied on social support. I did go to AA meetings. I was in an IOP program. And I made a lot of friends there, a lot of girlfriends. So we were always texting each other and keeping ourselves accountable. I definitely relied on practicing gratitude, even through struggles. I mean, some days were rough. I'm not going to lie. You know, a lot of my recovery was just hanging out by the pool with my kids and trying to practice, you know, pausing, being in the moment and not taking any of it for granted, because a lot of the time I was always intoxicated. Like, you know, so now I missed all of these things. You know, I had missed my daughter's first steps. I missed a lot of things for my oldest son. And so in this moment, I just had to practice a lot of gratitude, a lot of pausing, realizing when I'm starting to spiral, and I had to just be like, hey, stop. What are we doing right now? And what is it that needs to change in this moment? So I don't overreact or just be like, I'm going to the store, you know? But a lot of it was practicing gratitude and just being present. And if I ever needed any support, I would just text my girlfriends, hey, I'm really struggling right now. I only had friends in recovery. A lot of my friends I had lost, not because I got sober, but because I was intoxicated or we got in a spat or something while intoxicated. And so I didn't really regain any of those friends per se. But I had a lot of friends in recovery and they spoke the language I spoke and they just understood where I'm coming from. So that was a big help.
Wow. I can, you know, when, yes, right? Like just yes. I mean, the community, that's why, that's why we have our Monday night group that we offer, right? It's a life skills group, but it's a space where people can come together and actually have that community to see that they're not walking life change journey on their own. It's why we keep it very life skills in nature, so nobody feels like, wow, I'm entering a room and saying, hi, my name is, and I'm we don't have to, step into that space and focus on that very thing that we decided to leave, whatever that was, whether it's people pleasing, codependency, alcohol, food, shop, whatever, it doesn't matter, but we're all on this life change journey where we're, looking to learn these life skills and how we can utilize them in our relationships and then how we are experiencing the world. And so that community is so very important. And so I agree with that. And I love that you brought up the art of pause, because in early recovery, I think the art of pause is one of the single most important tools. And what we do cognitively while in that pause, of course, is equally as critical, but just even learning that pause, and knowing when engaging with an outside source, a person, or listening to a podcast, or some sort of appropriate distraction. I was there's a need to learn how to distract ourselves differently, because our original, our 20, 30, whatever, however many year conditioned way of dealing with that kind of stuff is a hand to mouth or a whatever, and we have to recondition that. So I think that that's pretty amazing that you're able to identify how important that was. And the people that we surround ourselves with, that's a whole different story. Knowing when to be okay with a relationship ending, knowing when it's okay to not, nurture a relationship, knowing those, I like the sphere of influence, circles, knowing who your core nucleus is, your inner circle, the outer circle, the toxic, and the ones that I just have to steer clear from altogether, right? Like, they just put them out of my life. And knowing how to utilize that is just so critical in the journey. Wow, thank you so much for bringing those up. So 5 years, that's no small feat. All right, like that, that says that, I got through the whole first 2 years of post-acute withdrawal. That means I did a lot of things. And I know a whole lot about you, and we'll dive into that here shortly. But today, what keeps you grounded and focused on your journey? If we think of it this way, I don't know as though we ever arrive at a destination. I think that our destination is the actual journey. And so what is that keeps you focused on that journey today?
I would have to say still staying connected. It's not always about I do still talk to my sober friends, of course, but I've also made a lot of other friends because I can show up and be the person that I'm meant to be. And it's whether, I do Cub Scouts, Girl Scouts, I'm making all these friends, and a lot of them don't know my story, and I just show up as me, and if it arrives, it arrives. Oh, I can't have that, sorry, because but so I do stay busy, stay active socially. I do practice a lot of gratitude, a lot, a lot of, and acceptance is a big one too. If something doesn't work out the way that I was hoping, I'm just like, okay, well then that wasn't meant to be. Like the universe said, no, that's fine. It's acceptance. It's okay. I'm just grateful for even experiencing that. Because before I probably, would have just been like, oh, well, I'll just grab another drink, like whatever. I wouldn't have actually felt my feelings in that moment. Another thing I do utilize a lot is kind of checking in with myself, seeing how I'm feeling. Because if I don't keep myself in check, and make sure that I'm feeling my feelings, because I've had times where I'll walk in and I'll start feeling other people's feelings, or they'll be saying that you are, and I'm like, but that's your feeling, that's not my feeling. So I need to not let the you statements get to me, because if they do, then I'm like, oh, well, maybe I am oversensitive, or maybe there is something wrong with me. And then I'll stay in that moment. And if I stay there for too long, then I start slowly sinking back down into, well, I'm not good enough, or I'm not doing my life right. And then, I'll slowly start inching my way closer to a relapse. And I'm like, nope, that's, social circle, checking in, gratitude, all those things are things that I have to actively do.
Absolutely. And I couldn't validate you even more anymore. Because acceptance is the way that we're able to move out of that rigid, hard stance of how I refer to it, right? Like the stance of a judger, whether it's judging myself, others, or whatever, and actually get into that space of being a learner, and really being willing to say, like I accept that this was, XYZ was the case. However, let me examine that a little bit so that going forward, I have the opportunity to change, shift, morph, whatever it is, into in the direction of how I would prefer to see myself, or how I would prefer to experience the whatever that is outside of me, and how I really would rather, be experienced by another group or an individual or whatever, right? So acceptance is a big deal. And I love the stance of, sitting in gratitude. I love all the time. I love to see the results of giving somebody the 30-day challenge to every day focus only on those things of appreciation and gratitude, to ourselves and to those inside of our life, and having that, having to do that for 30 days. It is life-changing. It is relationship changing. It literally changes the trajectory of our approach to life, when done effectively and with the right motive or intention. I love that. Checking in with our core, what I call the core non-physical feeling, right? Like checking in with yourself, like right here, right now in this moment, how I feel. And caring enough to investigate what's driving it, and how you can either capitalize on it or improve it going forward. Like that is such a critical piece, especially when we're trying to change the way our brain is firing, to changing and adjusting those neural pathways, right? Like you have to give it some evidence, for that to happen. And then, the last thing that I took notes of there is, I hear a filtration system, right? Like I hear you have an ability to only let in what is for you. And that is such a critical piece, because if I say this is my life too, it gets to look, feel, be however I want it to, I get to choose as my life motto, I have to offer that to every other being, which means when I'm listening, when I'm hearing, when I'm experiencing things outside of me, I've got to be able to filter that properly. And I also have to be able to filter what I send back out, which means I have to be able to filter my emotions and my physical responses. I have to be able to like calm my, calm my system, right? My nervous system. I have to be, there's so much involved in that. And I love that you can, already identify, or not already, 5 years, right? Like that you've been able to incorporate that, into something that serves you. I think that is so beautiful. But what I really want to, fold into here is, I think, such a critical piece of bringing forward your passion. So many folks in recovery, they focus on being a positive, role model for change for those, for other people seeking a recovery journey, or for that person that is still suffering or struggling. And that is amazing. But you've really taken this to a new space in owning your passion for effective intervention, for effective family system, and family systems all look different, but effective family system recovery, right? Like that whole unit. But also a passion to help parents as well as adolescents and young adults, right? Whether that's a preventative measure or a recovery measure, but to find that motivation. And I just think it is so beautiful. So, I know I just gave away a lot of your secrets, but your passion is so important to me. It's why this relationship was so important to nurture, right? So, let's talk a little bit about that.
Okay. So my passion is, definitely to help parents, especially those who are suffering from substance abuse and any other, like, I guess you want to say, failure to launch type things. Like, what is keeping you from being the best version of yourself? Whether it's alcohol or mental health, or are you just afraid to fail? You have to try, or it's not going to work. I mean, you can't be afraid of failure. It's just, you have to launch at some point, especially if you have children. And then, for the teens and the young adults, I mean, peer pressure is so hard. Failure to perform is hard. And if they don't have the appropriate coping skills, and just the skills and tactics to get through day-to-day life, I mean, it is so much easier just to numb out. I mean, especially when it's readily available. I mean, all the kids, like, I don't know how many kids I've seen that are, smoking marijuana, or, vaping THC, or, whatever, drinking. I don't know how many parties. Okay, I wasn't invited to them, but in high school, everybody was drinking around me, and they were partying, and, then there was teen pregnancies. There was all these things that was happening, and it could be avoided. It could be avoided. Like, it's all teaching them and the families the coping skills, the tools and tactics, good communication skills, open communication skills, showing up authentically, and just being present. I mean, that's just the biggest part, is being present in the moment with them at all times. Maybe not all times, you need a break sometimes, but preferably a sober one. Like, but yeah, just being present and being that soundboard for them is huge.
I love that, because you're correct. I remember a conversation I had with a friend, I don't know, 9 years ago. But anyway, having a conversation as her daughter, went into adolescence, and my kids were way ahead, right? Like, I started young. Anyway, and she was talking about her, the transition, and wanting to make sure that her daughter maintained a healthy fear of her when it came to things like social things in junior high and high school, and parties and the things like that. And I was like, well, wait a minute, right? Like, I think the last thing we want is for our children to have a fear of us, right? Like, there's nothing healthy about that. Um, how about a healthy, you know, connection to where they know that even if it is something that they're going to get in trouble about, that it's still okay to come talk to mom, right? Like, how about being that open, honest, you know, genuine person that is going to be there for them no matter what, and have unconditional positive regard for them, so that, right, like, they feel comfortable saying, hey, I'm going to this party, the parents aren't going to be there, there's probably going to be alcohol, maybe even some drugs, I still want to go, can I call you if I get uncomfortable? Or I'm curious about why they do that. Like, I want to go and observe. You know, I'm kind of thinking I want to give it a try. Let them come to you and say that without judgment, because chances are, as parents, you're leading by the example already. You might have weekend get-togethers with your friends where you know, everybody's out in the backyard barbecuing, all of the adults are, you know, drinking, smoking cigarettes, whatever. It doesn't mean that it gets to inappropriate levels of intoxication, but you're still leading by that example. I can tell you, at 12, when my father was killed in a tragic accident, I was like, how are these people, you know, after the funeral, how are these people, my relatives, my family, how are they smiling and chatting and having conversation? Like, how does this feel so normal on such a bad day? And I looked around, and every single one of them had, with the exception of my mother, because she was always the exception to the rule. She never smoked. And I don't know, whatever. Anyway, but in every single person's hand, there was a beer or some form of alcoholic beverage and a cigarette. Like, literally every single one. And I'm like, shit, I'm giving this a try. Excuse my language. Shoot, I'm giving this a try, right? Like, I'm going to go try this. And I did, and it worked. And it continued to work to ease my trauma suffering for a lot of years, because it instantly gave me a way. So anyway, we're leading by the example. I have clients, and I myself was guilty of this, talking about our body image, our weight, etc., our fitness, our, you know, diet needs, etc. Our kids are listening. We're leading by that example.
Yeah.
And so, like, let's you know, do this before we have an issue. But if we're already in an issue, just know that the same things can help, and like, make this a family situation. Everybody's going to have their own things. We're all unique beings, but making it a family affair, even if it's just 3 people, even if it's just 2 people, you know, like, having that. But you know, giving young people a place where they can go and feel like they can talk safely because somebody understands and gets them is so important and critical. Anyway, I could talk about this for hours. If you were to say, you know, your favorite way to initiate and or engage in conversation with somebody to help them find their path, their journey, whether that's working with you or somebody else, what is that favorite way for you to do that?
Favorite way. So really, I just ask them, like, how they feel they're experiencing their life on day-to-day basis. And, you know, oftentimes, when you ask that question, it opens the door for them to just kind of, it's almost like word vomit, to be honest. Like, they'll just keep going and adding, and you're like, okay. And then as you hear you know, there's a common theme to it, you just, you know, kind of go, okay, well, so if there's any way that you could fix, or any area in your life you could fix to experience your life better, what would that look like? Like, and then kind of go from there, because oftentimes there's a trend and you'll see it as they're talking, and you don't want to just point it out to them. You want them to acknowledge it themselves, because it does no good if you're like, well, I'm noticing this. You know, you can if you have that kind of relationship, but oftentimes that, you know, you're just meeting the person and you're like, okay, well, it sounds like you could possibly shift some things. If you want to experience your life in a certain way, what can you do to fix it? And oftentimes they'll tell you, like, okay, well, let's work on that together. Let's see what we can change and shift and morph to make it tailored to you.
I love that. So if somebody wanted to jump in and have a conversation with you, of course, I'm putting the links down below to everything. Do you prefer that they give you a call, or, oh, my internet connection is unstable, but let's just push through. That's the beauty of living in the country. Anyway, do you prefer that they call you first, or is it okay for them to just grab that consultation and type in a little bit of information and just put time on the calendar?
I'm good either or, you know, if they feel like they want to talk to me more in person before or like over the phone before scheduling, that's totally fine. Because sometimes they're uncomfortable being on Zoom or whatever it is, or they just don't know how to use Zoom. I know quite a few people, that struggle with that, and that's okay. But if you want to grab a consultation time and meet with me, I'm more than willing to do that.
That is awesome. I love that. And it's so important that when we're talking to people that, it's really in that effort to help them to connect with a provider that's going to speak their language, that really has a connection to the situation at hand, and truly, understands, that everybody has a different type of journey that needs to be experienced. And I love that, in our organization, we're always open to that, right? Like having that conversation and being able to say, absolutely, I can help you, and this is how, or let's try this avenue first, right? Like, or making those appropriate recommendations. And I love that, we're able to bring that, case management referral type feel to it, because it really makes it, all about the client, right? Like, we're not going to bring somebody on board that the work we do isn't going to serve. But anyway, Kristen, thank you so much for just coming in here and introducing yourself to the community. And I look forward to more and more and more from you over time. So many blessings. Everybody, just you can connect with Kristen below, and I'll put all of her information, social tags, etc., down below, whether this is below in YouTube or show notes, depending upon where you're listening, Apple, Spotify, whatever it is. Thank you so much for being here, and we look forward to serving you going forward.